Next, we're going to go ahead and look at an explosion, and I've created this explosion here in 3ds Max. Pretty much you can see that there are several different elements to it, and we'll actually replay it. But we have a main explosion, we have debris flying, we have an explosion cloud down here, and then it dissipates over time. So looking at that in 3ds Max, you can see that it's all timed out. We have one particle system that's actually generating several different percentages of particles in different directions and sizes, and they all have different properties. They all dissipate at different times, and they are represented by different colors here in this project. So now what we're going to do is we're going to begin by looking at something and how to set up an explosion. Now we begin with a new clean slate here. I will recommend that you go and do the fire tutorial here, and that's what I have here is my fire material. And it's important to have that because an explosion is not going to look very real without the actual fire material. Once you have that in there, then you're saved. It's inside your scene. You're going to be using portions of the particle system to retrieve that particular material. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to create three things. The first is going to be an actual particle system. And we do that by create geometry. Under particle systems, we find the PF source. I'm going to click and drag. Now by default, the PF source faces down. My particular settings, I'm going to require you to go ahead and rotate the PF source upwards. And you can, of course, once you've done this, you can move that PF source and animate it or move it or rotate or do what you want. But at least you have it facing up, and the settings I give you will work with the arrow facing the direction of the explosion. Next thing we're also going to do after we have the particle system is add in some different space warps. We're going to go into forces. We're going to be using something called drag. The drag icon is invisible, and we're also going to be using gravity. Gravity, of course, facing down towards the ground, so when our explosion hits, it actually recognizes gravity. At this point, let's go ahead and save our project. Okay, what we're going to do, and as you probably noticed that there's some files that you can use as reference. We have something that's like a little graph, it's like a little chart. We're going to be creating that chart, and we open that by selecting on the particle system, and underneath modify, you'll see something called particle view. Now, particle view is a separate window. If you have a dual monitor, you shouldn't have any problems. But what we have here is particle view, and what we're going to do is take that particle system and we're going to give it several different routes here. We're going to give it certain percentages. So I'm going to guide you through pretty much setting up the very first one, get you familiar with how these work, but then you'll use the chart that I've given you to go in and do exactly what I did, and that flow chart should match mine, that your explosion should look something like mine in the end. Now as I look at the chart, we want to begin with our very first our particle system starts here. It says PF source, and we can double click on that at any time, okay, and we should be able to see the properties of that to the right. I can also go over here and double click on event, right click, and rename that. And I want to make sure that you understand that throughout this process, I've actually used, on my diagram, I've used particular names describing particular parts of the explosion. So that'll help you when you go back in to tweak your animation, and if, let's say, you don't like the blast wave, you'll know what part of your chart to follow. So we're going to start, and the birth is 0, 30, T20 by default. If you select on birth, okay, you'll get the birth settings over to the right, and I'm going to change that from 0 to 10, and it's going to stop at 12. So it's only going to explode for 2 seconds, but then that explosion will last for a while, and that amount being 500 particles. So anytime we select on an icon, the properties will show up to the right side. So as you look at the flow chart here, you'll know exactly how to adjust the settings so that they look like what I have. Now at any point you come across something you don't need. For instance, in event 1, we don't use speed. Select speed, okay, by turning it there. Select it and hit delete. And that removes speeds. We don't need that. We also don't have shape here. Right click and delete shape. And we also don't have display at this point. So we're going to remove what we don't need. Okay, but then we're going to add in what we do need. Now down here is like a series of icons that you're going to go ahead and use. You can simply click the icon that you need and drag it, and it's all spelled out for you real simple. Split amount. Click and drag split amount. Line it up so the blue line shows up right underneath, and it will add to this event. And let's add 2 more while we're at it. Now I had split group by accident, split amount, drop it in, split amount, drop it in. Now you can see from my chart that each one of these is going to lead to another event. When you select split amount 1, I've actually turned that off, the properties to the right. Alright, I have every third, so here you'll collect every nth, which is third. Split amount 2 is also every third. And split amount 3 is 7%. So we change 50 to 7%. Now you can also see that mine may be out of line compared to the event chart that you have in front of you. As long as each one of these leads to the correct event, you'll have no problem. Last but not least, we have send out. Drop send out in there, and it's all. Now we've created our first event, and each one of these is going to split portions of that explosion to other areas. I'll do one more, and then I'm going to cut you loose on the project. We'll create a new thing here. We'll do flying debris. And flying debris begins with a delete 01. So we're going to find delete along our chart here. Drag delete just out here and anywhere, and it creates a new event. Right click on the event, rename it to flying debris. And you can go in and start adding all of the features of that part. Now to link it together, that's really easy. We want split amount 3 at 7% to link to flying debris. So I'm just clicking and dragging, and there it goes. Now I can rearrange this any way I want. I can move this chart around. So every piece down here, so that you understand what we're doing, if you select on it to the right here, you'll get a test description telling you exactly what it's doing, such as split source. It verifies particle origin, and if a particle is generated by a specific emitter, then the particle is sent to the next event. So you'll follow the chart that I've given you along with the directions, and you'll use this procedure to set up a complete explosion. Now, as you can minimize the particle view, you can also go back and look at your view and see what happens. Now, at this point, nothing's happening in our particle system, but as you add more events, you'll see those events physically working in your explosion. Make sure you save periodically, and if you have any questions, you should be able to get those answered by the flowchart, email me, or your project summary.